My name is Olivia Chen, and I'm about to tell you how one sentence turned me from a grieving widow into a woman who reclaimed her entire life. 20 seconds. That's all it took for my world to shatter and rebuild itself. I was standing outside my own kitchen, holding a tray of homemade tiramisu, when I heard my daughter-in-law Jessica say, "Ugh, this old woman is like a parasite. I can't wait for her to be gone so I can finally turn her room into my walk-in closet." I was 63 years old. My husband Richard had been dead for 8 months, and the woman my son married, the woman I'd welcomed into my home, into my heart, wanted me erased like a stain. But here's what Jessica didn't know. I wasn't just some helpless old woman. I was Olivia Chen, former corporate attorney, owner of 3 properties, and the sole trustee of a $7 million family trust. And I was about to teach her the most expensive lesson of her life. The laughter from the kitchen cut through me like glass. Jessica's friends were cackling, encouraging her. "Oh my God, yes, that room has the best light. You could fit like an entire Chanel collection in there." Another voice chimed in. "How much longer do you think she'll be around anyway? She's what, 100? 63, I thought coldly. I'm 63, you vapid child. My hands were shaking, but not from weakness, from rage. Pure crystalline rage that I hadn't felt since the courtroom when I demolished opposing counsel with nothing but facts and a smile. I took 3 deep breaths, the same technique I'd used before closing arguments, and walked into that kitchen with my head held high. "Dessert is ready, girls," I announced brightly, setting down the tiramisu I'd spent 3 hours making. Jessica's face went white. Her friends suddenly found their wine glasses fascinating. I served each of them with perfect composure, my hands steady as a surgeon's. Jessica stammered, "Olivia, But I held up one finger, silencing her with a gesture I'd perfected in boardrooms. "I heard your plan about the walk-in closet," I said pleasantly, as if discussing the weather. "It's actually a great idea. Very practical. That room does have excellent light." I watched her face cycle through confusion, relief, then hope. The fool actually thought I was agreeing with her. "In fact," I continued, taking a slow sip of my wine, "I've decided to make it easier for you. I'm moving out tomorrow." The relief on Jessica's face was almost comical. Her friends exchanged excited glances. Then I delivered the words that would become legendary in our family. "But the house and the trust fund are going with me. Good luck paying the mortgage." The silence that followed was deafening. Let me take you back so you understand how we got here. Richard and I built our empire from nothing. We met at UCLA Law School in 1982, 2 hungry kids who'd clawed their way out of immigrant families that sacrificed everything. His parents had fled Shanghai with $10 and a suitcase. Mine had worked in garment factories in LA, saving every penny for my education. Richard and I didn't just fall in love. We formed a partnership. We studied together, graduated top of our class together, and started our own firm together, Chen & Chen, Attorneys at Law. For 35 years, we were unstoppable. We made our first million by 35, our first 10 million by 45. We bought properties, invested wisely, and created a trust fund designed to protect our family for generations. When our son Michael was born, we poured everything into giving him opportunities we'd never had. Maybe that was our mistake. Michael was brilliant, charming, and completely unprepared for the real world. We'd given him everything: private schools, Yale, an MBA from Stanford, but we'd forgotten to teach him the most important lesson: the value of struggle. He joined a tech startup at 28 and made partner by 32, but it was our connections that opened those doors, our money that backed his first investment properties, our name that gave him credibility. When he brought Jessica home at 35, I saw red flags immediately. She was 26, beautiful in that manufactured LA way, perfect highlights, perfect teeth, perfect ambition. She worked in influencer marketing, which seemed to mean taking pictures of expensive things she didn't pay for. But Richard loved her energy. "She makes Michael happy," he'd say. And Michael was besotted, utterly, completely blinded by her youth and beauty. They married within 6 months. Jessica moved into our Brentwood home like a conquering queen. Not their home, ours. Because despite Michael's success, despite his Stanford MBA, they couldn't actually afford the lifestyle Jessica demanded. The trips to Santorini, the Hermes bags, the absolutely essential weekly spa treatments. I watched her spend Michael's salary faster than he could earn it, watched him take on debt to keep her happy, watched her eyes calculate the value of everything in our home, the Qing dynasty vases, the original California landscape paintings, my mother's jade jewelry collection. "Mom, could you maybe not display so many of Grandma's old things?" Jessica asked one day, her nose wrinkled in distaste. "They make the house look so dated. I'm thinking we need a more modern aesthetic, for when we have guests." We have guests. Our home. Her vision. I smiled and said nothing, but I started documenting everything. Then Richard got sick. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. The doctors gave him 6 months. He lasted 8, and every day was agony. I held his hand through the chemo, the radiation, the experimental treatments that insurance wouldn't cover. Jessica was always too stressed to visit the hospital. "It's just so depressing, Olivia. I hope you understand. I'm not good with sick people." She'd say this while posting Instagram stories from SoulCycle and Brunch at Republique. Michael was better, but barely. He'd visit for an hour, uncomfortable in the sterile room, checking his phone while his father struggled to breathe. "Sorry, Mom, big meeting. You know how it is." I knew exactly how it was. The night Richard died, I was alone with him. His last words were, "Don't let them take advantage of you, Liv. Promise me." I promised. At the time, I thought he meant don't let grief consume you. Now I know he meant something else entirely. After the funeral, Jessica's true colors began to show, or rather, she stopped bothering to hide them. During the wake, I overheard her telling Michael, "Thank God that's over. Now we can finally move forward. When do you think your mom will want to downsize? This house is really too much for one person." 3 days after burying my husband, 3 days. Michael, to his credit, looked uncomfortable. "Jess, come on, not now." But he didn't disagree with her. He didn't defend me. He just looked away. That's when I started to understand. My son had become a stranger. The boy who'd cried when I read him Charlotte's Web had become a man who could tolerate his wife's cruelty because confronting it was inconvenient. I grieved for 2 losses, my husband and the son I thought I'd raised.
I spent the next 6 months playing a role, the grieving widow, the helpless old woman. I let Jessica redecorate the living room, removing Richard's favorite leather chair. I said nothing when she donated half my clothes to Goodwill. "I thought you'd want to declutter, Olivia." I smiled weakly when she brought friends over at all hours, treating my home like her personal entertainment venue. But behind the scenes, I was busy. So busy. I met with my attorney, David Rothman, who'd been Richard's and my partner for 20 years. We reviewed every document, every asset, every clause in the trust. I transferred funds, updated beneficiaries, filed paperwork that would take months to process but would be ironclad when completed. "Are you sure about this, Olivia?" David asked. "Once we do this, there's no going back." I looked at him steadily. I've never been more sure of anything in my life.
I spent the next 6 months playing a role, the grieving widow, the helpless old woman. I let Jessica redecorate the living room, removing Richard's favorite leather chair. I said nothing when she donated half my clothes to Goodwill. "I thought you'd want to declutter, Olivia." I smiled weakly when she brought friends over at all hours, treating my home like her personal entertainment venue. But behind the scenes, I was busy. So busy. I met with my attorney, David Rothman, who'd been Richard's and my partner for 20 years. We reviewed every document, every asset, every clause in the trust. I transferred funds, updated beneficiaries, filed paperwork that would take months to process but would be ironclad when completed. Are you sure about this, Olivia? David asked. Once we do this, there's no going back. I looked at him steadily. I've never been more sure of anything in my life.
I spent 2 hours making that tiramisu, measuring each ingredient precisely, focusing on the task to keep my hands busy and my mind clear. Through the kitchen doorway, I could hear the party, the shrill laughter, the clink of glasses, the bass from whatever playlist Jessica deemed appropriate. I was sliding the dessert into the refrigerator when I heard my name. Not Olivia, the old woman. I froze. Jessica's voice carried clearly from the breakfast nook, just around the corner. God, I can't wait for her to just, move on to whatever's next. This house is literally perfect, but having her here is like living with a ghost that smells like medicine and old age. A chorus of giggles. I pressed myself against the wall, invisible, listening. How much longer do you think she'll be around? Another voice asked. I recognized her, Brittany, one of Jessica's influencer friends, all lip filler and no substance. Who knows? Jessica sighed dramatically. She's ancient. 60-something? Honestly, at that point, could be any day. And I'm sorry, but I'm not spending my 30s tiptoeing around someone else's mother in my own house. It's technically her house, isn't it? A different voice, slightly hesitant. Jessica's laugh was sharp. For now, but Michael's the only child. It'll all be ours eventually. And the second she's gone, I'm turning her room into the walk-in closet I've always wanted. That room has the best morning light in the whole house. It's criminal to waste it on her boring old person furniture. What about Michael? Brittany asked. Won't he be weird about it? Please, Michael does whatever I want. That's what happens when you marry a man who was picked last for dodgeball his whole life. Deep down, he still can't believe he landed someone like me. They laughed. They actually laughed at my son's insecurity, at the vulnerability he'd shared with this woman in private moments. I stood in that hallway for 30 seconds that felt like hours. My heart was pounding, but not from fear or sadness, from absolute clarity. Everything Richard and I had built, our home, our legacy, our family's future, she viewed as an obstacle to her walk-in closet. Our love story, our decades of sacrifice and hard work, reduced to an inconvenience blocking her shoe collection. I thought about my options. I could confront her privately, give her a chance to apologize. I could tell Michael, force him to choose between us. I could cry, play the victim, make them feel guilty. Or I could do what I'd done in courtrooms for 30 years, present my case with irrefutable evidence, and deliver a verdict they'd never forget. I picked up that tiramisu, straightened my shoulders, and walked into the room. Dessert is ready, girls, I announced, my voice cheerful and steady. The conversation died instantly. Jessica's face went through a fascinating journey. Shock, horror, calculation, then a forced smile. Olivia, we didn't hear you come in. I've been here the whole time, I said pleasantly, setting down the tiramisu with a gentle click. Making this for you. I hope you enjoy it. The silence was exquisite. Her friends were staring at their phones, their drinks, anywhere but at me. They knew I'd heard. The guilt was radiating off them like heat. Jessica opened her mouth, then closed it. Opened it again. Listen, I held up one finger, the same gesture I'd used to silence opposing counsel who thought they could interrupt my closing arguments. She stopped immediately. I heard your plan about the walk-in closet, I said conversationally. And you know what? It's actually brilliant. That room does have spectacular morning light. I watched hope flicker across Jessica's face. She actually thought I was giving her my blessing, that I was too old, too tired, too broken by grief to fight back. Really? She breathed. Because I mean, I was just... In fact, I continued, cutting through her stammering, I've decided to make it easier for everyone. I'm moving out tomorrow. You won't have to wait for me to die to get your closet after all. The relief on her face was almost insulting. She actually smiled. Oh, Olivia, that's so... if you're sure that's what you want... I'm completely sure. I think it's time for everyone to have what they deserve. I took a sip of my wine, savoring the moment. There's just one tiny detail we need to sort out. The smile faltered. Detail? Yes, you see, when I leave, the house comes with me, and the trust fund, and the investment properties, and the stock portfolio, and the life insurance payout from Richard's death that I haven't deposited yet. I watched the color drain from Jessica's face, from all of their faces actually. Brittany actually gasped. What are you talking about? Jessica's voice had gone shrill. The house is Michael's inheritance. You can't just... Actually, I can, and I have. I smiled at her the way I used to smile at opposing counsel when I knew I'd won. You see, this house is in my name, only my name. Richard and I purchased it in 1992, and when we updated our estate planning 5 years ago, we kept it solely in my name for tax purposes. Michael was never on the deed. But Michael's your only son. You can't disinherit him. I'm not disinheriting him. I'm liberating him, from the mortgage payment specifically. This house costs $18,000 a month to maintain. Property taxes, insurance, upkeep. I'm sure you two will manage just fine in whatever you can actually afford on Michael's salary. Jessica was shaking her head, denial and panic warring on her face. The trust fund. The trust fund, I said calmly, is a discretionary trust. Do you know what that means, Jessica? No, of course you don't. You've never had to think about these things. Let me explain. I set down my wine glass and folded my hands, slipping into my old attorney mode. The other women in the room had gone completely silent. This was better than any reality TV show they'd ever binge-watched. A discretionary trust means that I, as the trustee, have complete control over all distributions. Richard and I structured it this way specifically to protect our assets from creditors, lawsuits, and, I paused meaningfully, unsuitable spouses. Unsuitable? Jessica's voice was barely a whisper. Richard wanted to change the trust terms after your wedding. Did you know that? He wanted to add provisions protecting Michael's inheritance from community property claims. I talked him out of it. I said, give her a chance, Richard. Maybe she'll surprise us. Well, Jessica, you certainly surprised me today. You can't do this. Jessica had found her voice again, standing up now, her perfect facade cracking. Michael will fight you. His father wanted him to have security, stability, and a partner who loved him for more than his last name. I pulled out my phone. I'd been recording since I walked in the room. His father didn't want him married to someone who calls his recently deceased father's widow a parasite at a party in her own home. The gasp that went around the room was satisfying. Some of her friends didn't know I'd overheard that particular gem. You're recording us? Brittany squeaked. California is a two-party consent state for private conversations, I acknowledged. But you're in my home, using my electricity, drinking my wine, planning my metaphorical funeral. I'd say I have every right to document what happens under my own roof. Jessica's hands were clenched into fists. Michael won't believe you. He'll think you're just a bitter old woman who has a recording of his wife mocking his childhood trauma. Yes, I'm sure he'll be very skeptical. Let me paint you a picture of your new reality, I continued, enjoying the way Jessica was starting to understand the scope of her mistake. This house, as I mentioned, costs $18,000 per month. Your current rent, which I've been paying for the past 3 years since you moved in, is zero. That's $216,000 per year I've been subsidizing your lifestyle. I pulled up my phone notes, where I'd been documenting everything for months. Michael's salary is $240,000 per year. Very impressive. Before taxes, that is. After taxes, it's roughly $150,000. Now, let's subtract your Range Rover payment, $1,800 per month. Your essential spa and beauty treatments, $2,000 per month. The American Express bill that I've been helping Michael pay, averaging $8,000 per month. Jessica's face was turning an interesting shade of crimson. Her friends were staring at her with new understanding. What I'm saying, Jessica, is that even without the mortgage, you've been living about $100,000 beyond Michael's means, and you didn't even know it because I was covering the difference. That's not... Michael makes good money, Jessica protested. We can afford... Can you? I tilted my head. Let me continue with the math. A comparable home to this one, 4 bedrooms in Brentwood, decent neighborhood, rents for about $8,000 per month minimum. Add in utilities, which I've been paying, $800 per month. The gardener and pool service, $600 per month. The housekeeper who comes twice a week, $1,200 per month. I watched her face as the numbers mounted. So that's $10,600 per month just for housing and maintenance. Michael's take-home pay, after taxes and his 401k contribution that he'd be foolish to stop, is roughly $12,500 per month. That leaves you $1,900 for everything else: food, gas, insurance, your clothing addiction, dinners out, trips to Cabo. We have savings, Jessica said weakly. Do you? I raised an eyebrow. Because I have access to Michael's financial accounts. He gave me power of attorney when Richard was sick and never revoked it. Would you like me to tell your friends exactly how much is in your savings account? Jessica's silence was answer enough. I knew the truth. Their savings account had $3,400 in it. $3,400. That's what 6 years of a dual-income professional couple's financial discipline had produced. Because every dollar Michael saved, Jessica found a way to spend. The Chanel bags that were investments, the essential kitchen renovation last year that cost $60,000, the girl's trip to Tulum that was good for her mental health. One of her friends, a brunette named Madison who'd been quiet until now, spoke up hesitantly. Jess, I thought you guys were, set. You always said— What did she always say? I asked pleasantly. That they were rich? That Michael's family had money? Both technically true. Michael's family does have money. His mother has money. Michael has debt. That's not fair, Jessica finally exploded. You and Richard set him up to fail. You gave him everything growing up, then expected him to maintain the same lifestyle on a normal salary. You created the situation. I nodded slowly. You might be right about that. We did give him everything. We didn't teach him struggle. And now he's married to someone who's teaching him a very expensive lesson. The trust fund? One of the braver friends asked. How much are we talking about? I smiled. $7,200,000 as of last week's valuation. The sharp intake of breath was audible. Even Jessica's eyes widened. She'd known there was money, but I don't think she'd known how much. That money was meant for Michael's future, I continued. For his children's education, for medical emergencies, for opportunities, for security. Richard and I lived below our means for 40 years to build that nest egg. Then give it to him, Jessica demanded. It's his birthright. Is it? I set down my phone and looked at her directly. Let me read you something. This is from the trust document, section 7.3. The trustee may withhold distributions if, in the trustee's sole judgment, such distributions would not serve the beneficiary's best interests or would be squandered, wasted, or used to support the lifestyle of an unsuitable spouse. Jessica's face went pale. Unsuitable spouse? That's not legal. You can't just— Oh, but I can. Richard and I paid a very expensive attorney to make sure of it. When Michael told us he was getting married, I continued, Richard asked him to have you sign a prenuptial agreement. Do you remember that, Jessica? Her jaw tightened. I told Michael that was insulting, that if he really loved me, he wouldn't ask me to sign anything, and he agreed with me. He agreed with you because you cried and told him prenups were for people who expected to fail. You said it meant he didn't trust you. I'd heard the whole argument through the bedroom walls. You gave him an ultimatum, the prenup or the wedding. He chose the wedding. Because he loves me. Does he? Or does he love the woman you pretended to be when you were dating? The one who said she came from a humble background and appreciated simple things. I made air quotes. Before I found out your father is a plastic surgeon in Newport Beach, and you grew up with a horse and a trust fund of your own that you burned through by 25. The gasps from her friends told me this was news to them too. Jessica had carefully crafted her image as a self-made influencer, a girl who'd pulled herself up by her designer bootstraps. You investigated me? Jessica's voice was shaking with rage now. Of course I did. I'm an attorney, Jessica. Due diligence is my specialty. I pulled up another file on my phone. Your father, Dr. Martin Blackwell, cut you off 3 years before you met Michael. Do you want to know why? Don't you dare. Because you stole $50,000 from your mother's account to fund a fashion startup that never existed. The money went to pay off credit card debt you'd racked up pretending to be an influencer. Your father gave you a choice: get counseling for your shopping addiction and make restitution, or leave the family. That's a lie. But her face said otherwise. Is it? Because I have the police report right here. Your mother declined to press charges, but the documentation exists. You didn't tell Michael any of this, did you? You told him your parents were emotionally distant and you'd been financially independent since college. The room was dead silent now. Even the music had stopped. Someone had paused the playlist. All eyes were on Jessica, watching her carefully constructed world crumble. The pattern was obvious once I started looking, I continued, almost conversationally. I'd waited months to have this conversation, and I was going to enjoy every second. The first month you dated Michael, you accidentally left your credit card at dinner 4 times. He paid. You texted him the next day saying you'd Venmo him. You never did. Jessica's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The second month, you needed an emergency loan for rent because your paycheck was delayed. $2,400, never repaid. The third month, your car broke down. $3,500 for repairs, also never repaid. By the time Michael proposed, he'd loaned you $18,000. Do you remember what you said when he finally asked about repayment? I said we were getting married, Jessica whispered. I said what's mine is his and what's his is mine. Exactly. You said asking for the money back meant he didn't see a future with you. Classic manipulation. And my soft-hearted son, who'd never had a serious girlfriend before, who was so grateful someone like you would look at someone like him, he apologized. He apologized for asking for his own money back.
The front door opened. We all heard it. The jingle of keys, the heavy footstep in the foyer. Jess, why are there so many cars outside? Whose Mercedes is blocking the... Michael appeared in the doorway. He looked tired, his tie loosened, his hair disheveled from whatever crisis had kept him at the office late. He took in the scene, the room full of silent women, his wife's tear-stained face, me standing calmly with my phone in my hand. Mom, what's going on? Jessica rushed to him immediately, grabbing his arm. Your mother is being completely unreasonable. She's threatening to kick us out, to take away your inheritance. She's been investigating me like I'm some kind of criminal. Is this true? Michael looked at me, confused and hurt. Mom, what is she talking about? I met my son's eyes. Michael, honey, why don't you send Jessica's friends home? We need to have a family conversation. No, Jessica clutched his arm tighter. These are my friends. They're staying. They're leaving. My voice had the steel in it that made junior associates scramble. Now.
To their credit, Jessica's friends didn't need to be told twice. They grabbed purses and phones with remarkable speed, mumbling excuses and avoiding eye contact. Brittany paused at the door, looking back at Jessica with something like pity. Text me later, she said weakly. Madison lingered a moment longer. Jess, maybe you should, but Jessica's glare cut her off. She left. The house felt larger in the silence that followed. Michael was still standing in the doorway, looking between us like he'd walked into a play in the third act and couldn't follow the plot. Someone please tell me what's happening, he said finally. Your wife was explaining her plans for my bedroom, I said calmly. How she's going to convert it into a walk-in closet once I'm dead, or preferably sooner. Michael's face went blank with shock. What? She's lying. Jessica spun to face him. She's twisting everything. I was just joking with my friends, and she's... I have a recording, I said simply. I held up my phone. Would you like to hear it, Michael? Michael's face had gone pale. Mom, please tell me this is a misunderstanding. I pressed play. Jessica's voice filled the room, tinny through the phone speaker, but unmistakably clear. God, I can't wait for her to just, move on to whatever's next. This house is literally perfect, but having her here is like living with a ghost that smells like medicine and old age. Michael flinched like he'd been struck. The recording continued. The laughter, the walk-in closet plan, the comments about his childhood. Every damning word. How much longer do you think she'll be around? Brittany's voice asked. Who knows? She's ancient. 60-something? Honestly, at that point, could be any day. I stopped the recording. The silence that followed was crushing. Michael was staring at Jessica like he'd never seen her before. Michael, baby, you have to understand, I didn't mean it like that. I was just venting. Everyone vents to their friends. You called my mother a parasite. His voice was hollow. My mother who just lost her husband 8 months ago.
I was frustrated. Jessica's voice climbed higher. You don't understand what it's like living here. She's always here, always watching, always judging. This is her house. Michael's voice finally cracked. We live in my mother's house, Jessica. We don't pay rent. We don't pay utilities. We don't pay for anything. And you're complaining that she has the audacity to exist in her own home? That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean when you said you can't wait for her to be gone? When you said this house would be ours eventually? He was shaking now. My father is dead, Jessica. Dead. And you're sitting in his house, planning what you'll do with his widow's bedroom? Jessica's mask finally slipped completely. The sweet, apologetic expression vanished, replaced by cold calculation. Oh, don't act so high and mighty. You wanted this too. You're the one who said we needed our own space, that living with your mother was cramping your style. I suggested we get our own apartment, Michael roared. I suggested we move out and pay our own way. You're the one who said we should stay here and save money. Save money? Jessica laughed bitterly. Michael, we don't have money to save. Do you have any idea what things cost? What it takes to maintain the life we have? The life you want, Michael corrected. The Range Rover I didn't want. The clothes you don't wear. The trips we can't afford. That we deserve. Jessica was fully unraveling now. I'm not going to live like some basic suburban housewife shopping at Target. I married you for a better life than that. The words hung in the air. Even Jessica seemed to realize what she'd said. Michael took a step back, his face crumbling. You married me for a better life? His voice was small, hurt in a way that made my heart break. Not because you loved me? Michael, I didn't mean, of course I love you. But the money helps, doesn't it? I said quietly. Or what you thought was money, the life you thought you were marrying into. Jessica rounded on me. This is your fault. You raised him to be weak, to need someone to take care of him. I gave him confidence. I made him into someone. You made him into someone $200,000 in debt. The number landed like a bomb. Michael's head snapped toward me. What? I'd been dreading this moment, but it had to happen. I'm sorry, honey. I know you didn't want me to know, but when you gave me power of attorney to handle things during your father's illness, I never revoked access to your accounts. I've been watching. Mom, I can explain. Michael has 3 credit cards maxed out at $65,000 total, I continued, my voice gentle but firm. He took out a home equity line against his future inheritance, $80,000. And he's been borrowing from his 401k to cover expenses, $55,000 withdrawn, with penalties. Jessica's face was white. You told me we had savings. You said we were fine. I told you what you wanted to hear so you'd stop spending, Michael shot back. Every time I tried to talk about budgeting, you accused me of being cheap or said I was trying to control you. Because you were. Because we're drowning, Michael's voice broke. We're drowning and you just keep shopping, keep spending, keep treating my mother's generosity like it's your right. Michael sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. I'm such an idiot. Dad tried to warn me. You tried to warn me. But I thought if I just worked harder, made more money, I could make her happy. I sat beside him, placing my hand on his shoulder. For all my anger at Jessica, my heart still broke for my son. He'd made mistakes, terrible ones, but he was still my child. Michael, look at me. I waited until he raised his head. His eyes were red. Your father and I loved you. We wanted you to have everything, but we failed you in one crucial way. We never taught you that some things can't be bought, like self-respect, like choosing a partner who loves you, not your bank account. Jessica made a sound of protest, but neither of us looked at her. I'm moving out tomorrow, I continued, and I meant what I said.
This house, the trust fund, all of it. I'm restructuring everything. Mom, please. Michael's voice was desperate. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. I'll talk to Jessica. We'll go to counseling. Michael, she called you someone who was picked last for dodgeball his whole life. She told her friends that you do whatever she wants because you can't believe you landed someone like her. His face crumbled completely. I'm giving you a choice, Michael, I said firmly. The same choice my father gave me when I wanted to marry Richard against his wishes. He said, I love you, but I won't fund decisions I don't support. You can have my blessing or my money, but not both if you choose unwisely. Your father came around, Michael said weakly. He loved Dad eventually. Yes, because Dad proved himself. He worked 2 jobs to put me through law school. He lived in a studio apartment and ate ramen for 3 years. He showed my father he loved me more than comfort. I glanced at Jessica. Can you honestly say the same about your wife? Jessica finally found her voice. This is emotional blackmail. You can't force him to choose between his wife and his family. I'm not forcing anything. I'm simply making clear that my resources, my home, my money, my support, come with expectations, respect, gratitude, love that isn't conditional on a bank balance. I stood up. Michael, you're 37 years old. It's time you built a life on your own merits, not mine. So that's it? Jessica's voice was shrill. You're just cutting him off? No, I said calmly. I'm setting him free.
Here's what's going to happen, I continued, pulling out a folder I'd prepared weeks ago. Michael, you have 2 options. Option 1, you file for divorce. You enter credit counseling and financial therapy. You move into an apartment I own in Culver City. 1 bedroom, modest but comfortable. Rent-free for 1 year while you rebuild. After that year, we'll discuss your access to the trust fund and your inheritance. Michael stared at the folder like it was a snake. Option 2, you stay married to Jessica. You both move out tomorrow and figure out your finances on your own. You'll still inherit from me eventually. I won't disinherit my only child, but not a penny while I'm alive. No trust fund access, no financial help, no safety net. You can't do this. Jessica lunged forward, grabbing the folder. This is coercion. Michael, she can't force you to divorce me. She's not forcing me, Michael said quietly. He hadn't taken his eyes off me. She's making me choose, like a grown-up. The defeat in his voice broke my heart, but I held firm.
I could see Jessica's mind working, calculating. She'd built her entire life around the assumption of eventual wealth, the big inheritance, the comfortable future, and I was dismantling it all. Michael, baby, she's bluffing, Jessica tried, her voice taking on a wheedling tone. She would never actually cut you off. You're her only son. She's just upset right now. I'm not bluffing, I said coldly. I've already transferred the primary assets to a new trust. As of 5 p.m. today, you have no legal claim to anything. David Rothman has the paperwork. You did this today? Michael looked up, realization dawning. Before the party? You already knew? I had my suspicions. I've been watching her spending patterns, listening to her phone calls about when the old lady finally kicks it. Today just confirmed what I already knew. I held his gaze. She doesn't love you, Michael. She loves what she thought you represented. Jessica's face twisted with rage. How dare you? You don't know anything about our relationship. Don't I? Tell me, Jessica. What's Michael's favorite book? What does he do when he's stressed? What's his biggest fear? Silence. You don't know, do you? His favorite book is East of Eden by Steinbeck. I continued. He rereads it every year. When he's stressed, he goes to the batting cages because his father took him there as a boy. And his biggest fear is becoming irrelevant, being the child who couldn't live up to his parents' legacy. I turned to Michael. I know these things because I love you, because I pay attention. Can your wife say the same? Jessica's mouth opened and closed. That's not fair. I know important things. I know his work schedule, his favorite restaurants. You know his credit card limit and his salary, I corrected. There's a difference between knowing someone and knowing their net worth. Michael had gone very still. Mom, what's Jessica's favorite movie? The question hung in the air.
I waited. The Notebook, Jessica said quickly. Too quickly. It's Pride and Prejudice, the 2005 version, Michael said quietly. She watches it every time she's sad. You'd know that if you'd ever asked why she cries during certain scenes. Jessica's face paled. Michael, what's my middle name? What? This is ridiculous. What's my middle name, Jessica? The silence was damning. It's James, Michael said, after my grandfather. We've been married for 6 years.
This is insane. Jessica was pacing now, her perfect composure completely shattered. So I don't know every little detail about you? That doesn't mean I don't love you. Marriage isn't a trivia contest. No, but it requires basic interest in who your partner is, I said. Michael, does Jessica know you've been seeing a therapist for the past year? His head snapped up. How did you? I saw the copay charges on your credit card, $150 every Tuesday. I'm proud of you for going, by the way. I looked at Jessica. Did you know? Jessica's face was answer enough. He's been struggling with depression since his father died, I continued. Some weeks he could barely get out of bed. Did you notice? He seemed fine, Jessica stammered. He went to work. He went to work because he had to, because you needed him to maintain the income that funded your lifestyle. But did you ever ask how he was feeling? Did you hold him when he cried? Did you sit with him in his grief? I'm not good with that emotional stuff, Jessica said defensively. Some people aren't. Then you shouldn't have married someone who needs emotional support, I said flatly.
Michael stood up slowly. He walked to the window, looking out at the garden his father had planted, the roses Richard had tended every weekend, the koi pond they'd installed together. I need time to think, he said finally. No, Jessica grabbed his arm. Michael, you can't seriously be considering this. She's manipulating you. Can't you see that? He turned to look at her, and I saw something in his face I hadn't seen in years. Clarity. Did you ever love me, Jess? Really love me? Of course The truth. Please. I think I've earned that much. Jessica's mask finally cracked completely. I cared about you. I did. You were sweet and kind, and you treated me well, and that counts for something. But you didn't love me. I thought I could learn to. Her voice was desperate now. People grow to love each other all the time, and we were good together. You said so yourself. We were good together when I could afford to keep you happy, Michael corrected. The second there was financial stress, you became someone I didn't recognize. Because you lied to me, Jessica shot back. You let me think we were secure. You let me plan our future based on money you didn't have. You never asked about our finances. You just spent.
They stared at each other across the living room, my son and the woman who'd promised to love him through richer and poorer. The silence stretched until Jessica finally broke. What do you want me to say? Her voice was cold now, the sweet facade completely abandoned. That I married you for love? Fine, I didn't. I married you because you were nice and safe and from a family with money. Is that what you want to hear? Michael flinched, but he didn't look away. I was 26 years old, Jessica continued, her words tumbling out in a rush of honesty that was 6 years too late. My father had cut me off. I was drowning in debt. And you were there. Sweet, stable Michael with his lawyer parents and his nice family and his secure future. And yes, okay, I chose security. Is that really so terrible? Yes, Michael said simply, when you lie about it. When you make me believe you love me while secretly counting the days until my mother dies so you can have her bedroom. Jessica's face crumpled. I do care about you. Maybe it wasn't love at first, but I stayed, didn't I? I could have left, but I stayed. You stayed because leaving would mean losing access to the money. So what? Jessica threw up her hands. Welcome to the real world, Michael. People have practical reasons for staying in marriages. Your parents stayed together for practical reasons. They built a law firm together. They built a law firm because they loved each other. I interjected quietly. The partnership was born from love, not the other way around. I want a divorce, Michael said. The words came out steady, certain. Mom's right. This isn't a marriage. I don't know what it is, but it's not what I signed up for. You can't be serious. Jessica's voice climbed to a near shriek. After everything I've given up for you. What have you given up? Your father's money that you'd already lost? Your influencer career that never existed? What exactly did you sacrifice, Jessica? She had no answer. For the first time since I'd known her, Jessica was completely speechless. I'll stay in a hotel tonight, Michael said quietly. I'll start looking for an apartment tomorrow. Mom, thank you for the offer, but I think I need to do this completely on my own. No safety net. Pride and heartbreak warred in my chest. Are you sure? I'm sure. You and Dad taught me to work hard, to be self-reliant. I just forgot somewhere along the way. Time to remember. He looked at Jessica. You can stay here tonight. Pack your things. I'll send movers for my stuff in the next few days. Michael, please. Jessica's voice broke. Real tears now. Whether from genuine emotion or fear of her collapsing life, I couldn't tell. Don't do this. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. I can change. You said you married me for security. Well, the security's gone. There's nothing left to fix. Michael left. Just walked out of his childhood home, out of his marriage, out of the life he'd been living. I heard his car start in the driveway, heard the engine fade into the distance. Jessica stood in the middle of the living room, mascara running down her face, her perfect Instagram life crumbling around her. This is your fault, she said, her voice venomous. You poisoned him against me. You manipulated him. I told him the truth, something you never did. The truth? Jessica laughed bitterly. The truth is that you're a bitter old woman who couldn't stand to see her son happy. You were jealous that he had someone else in his life. Jessica, stop. Just stop. I was too tired for this. You need to be out by tomorrow evening. I'll be moving back into my bedroom, and I'm hiring movers to put your belongings in storage. You'll have 30 days to retrieve them. You can't just throw me out. I have rights. California is a community property state. And you're welcome to hire a lawyer to fight for your share of Michael's debt. I'm sure they'll be very excited to take your case. The reality of her situation finally seemed to hit her. Where am I supposed to go? Perhaps back to Newport Beach? I'm sure your father would be thrilled to hear from you. After Jessica finally left, screaming threats about lawyers and lawsuits, I sat alone in the house for the first time in years. Really alone. The silence was profound. I walked through the rooms, seeing them with new eyes. The living room where Richard and I had hosted countless dinners. The study where we'd worked late nights on cases, debating strategy and drinking cheap wine. The garden where we'd celebrated Michael's acceptance to Yale. Every corner held a memory. Some were joyful. Some, especially recent ones, were painful. I ended up in the bedroom I'd shared with Richard for 30 years. His side of the bed was still untouched. I'd been sleeping on the couch for months, unable to face the empty space beside me. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally let myself cry. Not for Jessica's betrayal. That was expected. Not even for Michael's heartbreak. That was necessary. But for Richard. For the life we'd built that was now fundamentally changed. For the family dream that had died with him. I did what you asked, I whispered to the empty room. I didn't let them take advantage. But God, Richard, I wish you were here. I wish you could tell me I did the right thing. The house settled around me. No answer came. But somehow, in the quiet, I felt a sense of peace. I woke up in my own bed for the first time in 8 months. The sun was streaming through the windows, that morning light Jessica had coveted. I laid there for a moment, feeling the emptiness of the house, the weight of my decisions. My phone buzzed, a text from Michael. Mom, I'm okay, at a hotel downtown, starting apartment search today. Thank you for last night. I needed that wake-up call. Love you. I smiled through fresh tears. My son would be okay. It might take time, it might take struggle, but he'd be okay. Another text, this one from David Rothman. Olivia,
Jessica's lawyer called already. Teresa Martinez from Bingham and Walsh. She's aggressive. Wants to meet ASAP. I told her we'd respond in 72 hours. Get some rest. And so it began. The legal battle. The division of assets. The messy, expensive process of untangling a marriage. I got up, made coffee, Richard's favorite blend that I'd kept buying out of habit, and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. Time to plan my next move.
Teresa Martinez called me directly 3 days later. I'd been expecting it. Mrs. Chen, I represent Jessica Blackwell Chen. I'd like to discuss a settlement before this gets ugly. Ms. Martinez, I'm not a party to Michael and Jessica's divorce. You should be speaking with Michael's attorney. Oh, we both know you're the puppet master here. Michael has hired budget counsel who'll be useless in court. Meanwhile, you're sitting on millions, and my client was promised? Your client was promised nothing in writing. There's no prenuptial agreement giving her claim to family assets. And I suggest you review California Probate Code Section 16,000 regarding discretionary trusts before you make threats. Silence. Then, you practiced family law. Corporate law, primarily, but I know my way around an estate plan. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. Ms. Martinez, your client lied to her husband about her financial history, called his grieving mother a parasite, and was recorded planning to convert said mother's bedroom into a closet. What exactly do you think a judge will award her? Community property rights to any income earned during a marriage where she spent every dollar faster than it was earned, creating massive debt? Good luck with that argument.
Mrs. Chen, let's be practical. Martinez's tone shifted, less aggressive now. Jessica is willing to walk away from the marriage quietly. No public scandal, no messy trial. All she wants is a reasonable settlement to start over. Say $500,000. I laughed, actually laughed. $500,000 for 6 years of marriage to a man she admitted she never loved? That's quite the hourly rate. She gave up career opportunities to support Michael. She gave up posting sponsored content on Instagram for 2,000 followers? Please. I have her tax returns. She earned $18,000 total over 6 years as an influencer. She spent more than that monthly. Mrs. Chen, here's my counteroffer, Miss Martinez. Jessica walks away with exactly what she brought to the marriage. Nothing. In exchange, I won't pursue civil action for fraud, financial exploitation of a vulnerable person, or emotional abuse. And I won't share the recording of her party conversation with anyone outside the family. That's extortion. No, that's negotiation. Your client can take it or risk a trial where all of this becomes public record, including her theft from her parents. I wonder what a jury would think of that pattern of behavior. Another long silence. I'll speak with my client.
Jessica fought for 2 months. She demanded spousal support, claimed entitlement to Michael's future earnings, even tried to argue she deserved compensation for emotional labor during Richard's illness she'd barely acknowledged while he was alive. But Martinez was smart enough to see the writing on the wall. The recording was damning. Jessica's spending history was damning. Her own admission that she'd married for security rather than love was damning. In the end, she signed the papers. Michael kept his debt and his freedom. Jessica got nothing except her clothes, her car, which was in her name, and whatever she'd squirreled away in her personal accounts. The day the divorce was finalized, Michael came to the house, our house. I'd been slowly reclaiming it, removing Jessica's touches, bringing back the warmth that had been there before. It's done, he said, sitting heavily on the couch. I'm officially divorced. How do you feel? Lighter? Scared? Free? He looked around the living room. I miss this place. I miss you. I miss feeling like I had a home. You always have a home here, Michael. You know that. I know. But I need to build my own first. Prove I can do it. I nodded, proud beyond words.
Over the next 6 months, I watched my son transform. He moved into a modest apartment in Culver City, not the one I'd offered, but one he'd found and could almost afford on his salary. He sold the Range Rover and bought a used Honda. He started seeing his therapist twice a week. Most importantly, he started saying no. No to dinners he couldn't afford. No to trips that weren't in his budget.
No to keeping up appearances for people who didn't matter. He consolidated his debt, set up a payment plan, and started living within his means. It was painful to watch him struggle, to know I could solve his problems with a single check. But I kept my promise. I let him figure it out. He'd call me every Sunday. We'd talk about his week, his progress, his setbacks. Some weeks he'd eaten ramen every day. Some weeks he'd had to skip social events because he couldn't afford them. But his voice got stronger each time we talked. I went on a date, he told me one Sunday. Her name is Priya. She's a public defender. We met at a coffee shop, and she paid for her own drink. And Mom, she asked me about my favorite book. I smiled through tears. And what did you say? East of Eden. And she'd read it. We talked for 3 hours. I'm so proud of you, honey. It's early days. I'm not rushing into anything. But it's nice to be with someone who likes me for me.
Meanwhile, I began my own transformation. I'd spent 8 months in grief, then 6 months in battle mode. Now, finally, I was ready to live again. I started with the house. I renovated my bedroom, not because Jessica had wanted it, but because I needed to reclaim it as mine. New paint in a warm sage green Richard had always loved. New furniture that felt fresh but comfortable. I hung photos of our life together, all the memories I'd hidden away because they hurt too much to see. I hired a housekeeper, not because I couldn't clean, but because I was tired of maintaining a 4-bedroom house alone. I got a dog, a rescue golden retriever named Justice, because Richard had always wanted one, but we'd been too busy. I started volunteering at a legal aid clinic, helping low-income families with estate planning, helping them avoid the mistakes we'd made, teaching them to protect their legacies. And I started dating. Nothing serious, just coffee meetings and dinner conversations with interesting men my age who could hold up their end of a discussion about politics, literature, world events. Men who didn't need me to be anything other than myself.
The call came on a Tuesday night, 11 months after the confrontation. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Olivia? It's Jessica. I was silent for a moment, surprised. Jessica, I wasn't expecting to hear from you. I know. Can we talk? Just for a few minutes? Every instinct told me to hang up, but curiosity won. I'm listening. I'm in therapy now. Real therapy, not just the couples counselor Michael and I tried once. And my therapist suggested I make amends with people I've hurt. A pause. You're at the top of that list. I see. I want to apologize for everything, for what I said about you, for how I treated you, for all of it. You were nothing but generous to me, and I was horrible. I waited. There had to be more. I'm not calling to ask for anything, Jessica continued quickly. I'm not asking for money or another chance with Michael or anything like that. I wanted you to know that I see it now, what I did, who I was, and I'm sorry. What changed? I asked quietly. Everything fell apart. My friends disappeared the second the money was gone. My father won't speak to me. I'm working as a receptionist and living with a roommate. And for the first time in my life, I have to face who I actually am without money or status or anyone to blame.
It's humbling. Jessica's voice was thick with emotion. I thought I was special, that I deserved everything I had, that people like you, people who worked hard, were just lucky. I didn't understand that luck was a small part of it, that most of it was sacrifice and choice and discipline. I sat down, processing this. Jessica, I appreciate the apology. I do. But you need to understand, an apology doesn't erase the harm. It doesn't undo the betrayal. I know that. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I threw away, who Michael was, what you and Mr. Chen built. I was so focused on what I wanted that I couldn't see what I had. We were both quiet for a moment. For what it's worth, I said finally, I think what you're doing now, the therapy, the honest work, the reflection, that takes more courage than the life you were living before. Keep going. Not for me or Michael, but for yourself. Thank you, Jessica whispered. And Olivia, tell him I'm sorry I couldn't be who he deserved. He's a good man, better than I ever gave him credit for. I'll tell him. After she hung up, I sat with Justice, stroking his soft fur. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't about Jessica. It was about releasing the anger I'd been carrying, about making space for joy again.
1 year to the day after the party, I hosted a dinner, a real one, with people I loved. David Rothman and his wife, my college roommate who'd flown in from Boston, a few friends from the legal aid clinic, and Michael with Priya. I watched them together, my son and this smart, kind woman who looked at him with genuine affection. They'd been dating for 6 months now, taking it slow, building something real. She's wonderful, I told Michael as we set the table together. Really wonderful. She is. And Mom, I told her everything. About Jessica, about the debt, about my mistakes. All of it. And she stayed? He smiled. She said everyone has a past. What matters is what you do with it. Dinner was lively, full of laughter and good conversation. David told stories about cases Richard and I had won together. My college roommate reminisced about our law school days. Priya held her own in debates about Supreme Court decisions. At one point, I looked around my table, my home reclaimed and renewed, and felt Richard's presence. Not in a ghostly way, but in the legacy we'd built, the values we'd instilled, the love that remained even after loss. To new beginnings, I raised my glass. To new beginnings, they echoed.
3 months later, I called Michael to my house for a serious conversation. He came immediately, worry etched on his face. He still associated being called to my house with bad news. Relax, I said, handing him tea. You're not in trouble. I want to discuss the trust fund. His expression became guarded. Mom, I told you, I don't want the money until I've earned the right to it. I know, and you have. I pulled out a folder. You've been paying down your debt for 18 months. You're down to $95,000 from $200,000. You're living within your means. You're in therapy. You're building a healthy relationship. Michael, you've done the work. It's not enough. I still have debt. I still need to... Michael, honey, listen to me. Your father and I didn't create this trust fund so you could suffer unnecessarily. We created it to give you security and opportunity, to help you build a good life, not to punish you for your mistakes. I opened the folder. I'm releasing $100,000 from the trust, enough to clear your debt completely and give you a small cushion. The rest remains in trust until you're 40, as originally planned. Mom, I can't. You can, and you will, because I'm not giving this to you as a reward or because you begged. I'm giving it because you've proven you understand its value now.
Michael started crying. Not the broken sobs from the night of the confrontation, but clean, cathartic tears of relief. I've been so scared, he admitted. Scared that I'd never dig myself out, that I'd be paying for my mistakes forever, that I'd ruined my whole life. You made mistakes, expensive ones, but you're not your mistakes, Michael. You're what you do after you make them. I handed him tissues. Besides, your father would be proud of who you've become. Not who you were with Jessica, but who you are now. I wish he could see it. He can. I believe that. I pulled out another document. There's one condition for this money. Michael's face fell. Of course there is. You have to put $20,000 in a separate account, untouchable for 2 years. That's your emergency fund, your safety net, so you never feel desperate enough to make panic decisions again. He laughed through tears. That's your condition? To force me to save money? Is there a problem with that? No, no problem at all. He hugged me tight. Thank you, Mom, for everything. For the kick in the ass, for the tough love, for not giving up on me. Never, honey. Never.
6 months later, Michael brought Priya to Sunday dinner, a tradition we'd reestablished. After we ate, Michael excused himself to take a call, leaving Priya and me alone in the garden. Mrs. Chen, can I ask you something? Priya's voice was hesitant.
Of course, and please call me Olivia. Michael told me everything about Jessica, about the divorce, the debt, all of it, and I know you helped him get back on his feet. I did what any mother would do. Maybe, but not every mother would have let him struggle first. Priya looked at me directly. I need to know, if Michael and I get serious, if we get married someday, will you be watching me, testing me, waiting for me to fail? The question was fair. I considered it carefully. Priya, I'm not going to lie. Jessica's betrayal made me cautious, but I've watched you with my son for almost a year now. I've seen how you encourage his therapy, how you split bills equally even though you earn more, how you support his financial goals instead of undermining them. I touched her hand gently. You're nothing like Jessica. You love Michael for who he is, not what he has. And yes, if you marry him, I'll be watching, but only because I care, not because I'm waiting for you to fail. Priya's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. That means everything. Are you asking because Michael's planning to propose? She smiled. I'm not supposed to say anything. I won't tell. But Priya, whatever you decide, I'm in your corner. Michael proposed 2 months later at the Japanese garden where Richard and I had gotten married. He called me afterward, voice shaking with joy. She said yes, Mom, and she wants a small wedding, just family and close friends. Nothing Instagram-worthy, she said, just real. I'm so happy for you, honey. I want to do it right this time. A prenup that's fair to both of us, a wedding we can afford without going into debt, a marriage built on honesty. That's all your father and I ever wanted for you. I know. I finally know. A pause. Mom, would you walk me down the aisle? I know that's usually the bride's thing, but I would be honored. The wedding was 6 months later. Small, intimate, perfect. Priya's parents were warm and welcoming. Her father, a retired math teacher, and her mother, a social worker, reminded me of Richard and me in the early days. Practical people who valued substance over show. The ceremony was in our garden. Priya wore a simple dress from Nordstrom. Michael wore the suit his father had given him for his law school graduation. And I walked my son down the aisle with tears streaming down my face. Not from sadness, but from pride. At the reception, I gave a toast. I'd prepared it carefully, wanting to honor both the past and the future. Michael, when you were born, your father and I made promises. We promised to love you unconditionally, to guide you, to give you the tools to build a good life. We didn't always get it right. We gave you too much without teaching you the value of struggle. We protected you from consequences when we should have let you face them. Michael's eyes were red, but he was smiling. But you taught us something too, honey. You taught us that mistakes aren't failures, they're education. That rock bottom is a foundation to build on. That sometimes love means letting go, so someone can learn to stand on their own. I turned to Priya. And Priya, thank you for seeing who my son really is, for loving his kindness, his loyalty, his heart, for being his partner, not his dependent or his enabler, but his equal. I raised my glass. Richard isn't here, but I know he's proud. Proud of the man Michael has become. Proud of the love you two are building. To Michael and Priya, may your marriage be built on the strongest foundation there is. Truth, respect, and real love. The room erupted in applause and tears. That night, after the wedding, I sat in the garden alone, justice at my feet, a glass of wine in my hand, the moon bright overhead. We did it, Richard, I said softly to the night air. Our boy is going to be okay. He married a good woman, a strong woman, someone who will stand with him, not just benefit from him. I felt the familiar ache of his absence, but it was gentler now, less like a wound and more like a tender scar. I miss you every day. I miss your laugh, your terrible jokes, your way of seeing the best in people, even when they didn't deserve it. But I'm okay now. I'm living again, and I think you'd be proud of that too. The breeze picked up, rustling the leaves of the oak tree Richard had planted when Michael was born. I chose to believe it was his answer. 2 years after that fateful party, I got an unexpected letter. The return address was from a rehabilitation center in Arizona. Inside was a handwritten note from Jessica. Dear Olivia, I don't expect you to read this, but I'm writing it anyway as part of my recovery program. I'm in rehab, not for drugs or alcohol, but for spending addiction and the underlying issues that drove it. After the divorce, I hit bottom hard. I tried to maintain my old lifestyle on a receptionist salary and ended up with an eviction and a bankruptcy. My father finally agreed to help, but only if I got real help. I've been here for 4 months. I've learned that I used spending to fill a void, that I used people to feel valuable, that I built my entire identity on external validation. I'm not writing to ask for anything. I just wanted you to know that your tough love, as much as I hated it at the time, was exactly what I needed. You showed me that actions have consequences, that you can't use people without eventually losing everything. I'm working as a counselor now, helping other women with shopping addictions. I'm making $35,000 a year and living in a studio apartment, and I'm happier than I've ever been because it's real. Thank you for refusing to enable me. Thank you for protecting Michael from my worst impulses. And thank you for teaching me that sometimes the kindest thing someone can do is say no. Jessica. I folded the letter carefully and added it to a box I kept of significant documents. Then I wrote back, a brief note wishing her continued success and healing. Not friendship, not forgiveness exactly, but acknowledgement of her growth.
3 years after the party, Priya gave birth to twin girls. They named them Rose and Lillian, after Richard's mother and mine. When Michael called to tell me, I cried for an hour. They're perfect, Mom, absolutely perfect. And Priya is amazing. She's already making lists and plans and... Michael, honey, breathe. You're going to be a wonderful father. What if I mess up? What if I spoil them the way you and Dad spoiled me? I smiled. You won't, because you learned the hard way what happens when you give someone everything without teaching them its value. You'll teach your daughters to work hard, to appreciate what they have, to build their own lives. I'm scared, Mom. Every good parent is. That's how you know you care. When I met my granddaughters in the hospital, tiny and perfect and wrapped in pink blankets, I felt Richard's presence more strongly than I had since he died. These children, born from Michael's growth, from his second chance, from the lessons learned through pain, were the future Richard and I had worked for. Hello, little ones, I whispered, holding Rose while Michael held Lillian. You are so loved, so incredibly loved, and you're going to have the most wonderful life because your parents understand something it took them years to learn, that love isn't about money or status or things. It's about showing up, being present, and teaching by example. Rose wrapped her tiny hand around my finger, and I knew everything had been worth it.
Now, 5 years after that party, I sit in my garden writing this story. Justice is older now, gray around the muzzle, still loyal and loving. The house is quieter. Michael and Priya have their own home now, one they saved for and bought themselves. But they visit every Sunday with the twins. People ask me sometimes if I regret how I handled things, if I was too harsh, if I should have been more forgiving. My answer is always the same. No. Jessica needed to hear the truth, no matter how painful. Michael needed to learn independence, no matter how difficult. And I needed to reclaim my life and my home, no matter how hard that was. Would things have been easier if I'd just tolerated Jessica's cruelty? If I'd continued to subsidize their lifestyle? If I'd pretended not to hear her planning to turn my bedroom into a closet? Maybe, in the short term. But in the long term, we all would have remained trapped. Jessica and her delusions, Michael and his codependence, and me in my grief and powerlessness. Sometimes love means saying no. Sometimes it means letting people struggle. Sometimes it means standing firm even when everyone thinks you're too harsh. Richard and I built our legacy on hard work, integrity, and the courage to make difficult decisions. The night of that party, I honored that legacy by refusing to be anyone's victim or enabler. My son is thriving now, happy, healthy, financially stable, married to a woman who truly loves him. My granddaughters are growing up with parents who understand that character matters more than bank accounts. And I'm living a life that's mine, on my terms, with no apologies. That walk-in closet Jessica wanted, I did turn my bedroom into something new eventually, but not a closet. I turned it into a library,
floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with Richard's and my favorite books, comfortable chairs, a window seat overlooking the garden, a room for reading, thinking, and remembering all the good we built together. Sometimes the twins curl up with me there, and I read to them the same stories I read to Michael: East of Eden, Charlotte's Web, The Little Prince. Stories about love, loss, growth, and second chances. And sometimes when the light hits just right and the house is quiet, I swear I can hear Richard's voice. You did good, Liv. You did real good. Yes, my love, we did.